right. Welcome to Self-Care Saturday with ND Jones. Today I have two more very special guests who I told them before we started, lovely, beautiful women. I don't think they believe me, but look at them. It's absolutely true. But you can't see the beauty on the inside. You will when we have our discussion. So what we're going to do is always going to allow my guests to introduce themselves. So we're going to begin with, man, I just realized this. We have both of them are doctors of education, or I think one EDD and then one PhD. Love that. That's the first for this podcast. So let's begin with our newest doctor, Dr. Savage. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Oh, sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Nakeisha Savage, or I guess I should say Dr. Nakeisha Savage. I guess just who I am is I'm an educator, been in the field of education for the past 21 years. I am a mom. I am in a new position in a new district, and so I'm trying to figure that piece out. I am here to just collaborate and talk about self care. So thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for accepting my invitation. I will share this with our viewers. So, Lakeisha shared this great poetry that she did. She stood up and she was in front of people. And when I talked to her about my journal, she said, I have this poem. She sent me the video and I watched it at home and I sent her a text and just simply said like, wow. And then I was like, can I have this? Can I put this in the journal? So by the time you view this video, when you purchase the journal, you will see Dr. Savage poem. It's beautiful, it's timely, and she touches on a very critical issue, not simply in the Black or African American community, but just in general. So I don't want to spoil it. Nakeisha, what's the title of your poem?
Actually, I haven't identified a title for it. I just felt it and wrote it. So it's untitled at this point.
It's untitled. So she'll have a title, but it's a homage to her daughter, Morgan, right?
Absolutely.
Beautiful. Absolutely. Thank you. And Dr. Oliver.
Hi, I am Heidi Oliver-O'Gilvie. I am wife, mother, daughter, sister, educator. I have been in education for the past, I think this is year 24, going into year 24 for me. So I've been at it for a while. I've taught and worked in a variety of school districts across the country or across the up and down the Eastern Seaboard, Washington, D.C., Prince George's County, Maryland, Anne Arundel County, Maryland, Philadelphia, School District of Philadelphia. I've consulted in a variety of school districts across the country doing things around leadership, equity, diversity, and inclusion. Literacy, I'm a literacy person, and I am a proud member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated.
Yes, yes. And newly minted in a role, in a nice leadership role with outstanding people such as myself and Nakeisha. She didn't mention that, but steady moving up, steady making progress for the betterment of all the students in our district and also for the teachers. So her leadership is very much appreciated. And she's also a published author. Did you want to share about your article? Maybe you have more that you were hiding out and you haven't revealed, but at least share the one that I know. And if you have more, share that with us as well, please.
Sure. So I do have an older publication in a literacy journal that talks about critical literacy. I have a piece in the Education Post that looks at 5 core strategies around leadership, effective leadership. And most recently, I published a piece in ASCD Ed Leadership that looks at the ways in which we can scale our anti-racist teaching and learning.
Exactly. Beautiful. And so Heidi has a lot of knowledge and background with leadership. And with our discussion of resilience and self-care, anyone in education, a lot of other fields in which you really are in the community helping people, self-care for our teachers, super important. Resilience is super important and keeping our teachers healthy mentally, keeping our teachers healthy emotionally, physically, all of our leaders and also our students. So self-care and resilience is extremely important within our district, but just in our field of education, because we lose people, right? We lose people who find it difficult to persevere. We lose people if they don't take care of themselves. So this conversation is just important across the board. So thank you, ladies. Welcome. And I look forward to the conversation we are about to have. So our first question to kick us off, and I'm going to let Heidi go first since Nakeisha was kind enough to introduce herself first. So what does it mean to be a Black woman in the 21st century?
Wow, that's a great question. So I think it means a lot of things. I think it means that we are courageous, we are thinkers, we are playing both offense and defense. I think it also means that we are lifting as we climb. So you mentioned me being in a new leadership position here in our district. For me, that means that I am making sure that the other people around me are also having opportunities to grow, to develop, to think, to showcase their skills and their treasures, as I like to call them, their time and their talents. It also means that we are looking out for the betterment of humanity. Most Black women fix things. We're fixers, right? We come in, we solve problems, we make ways, we blaze trails. So I think it's that, but also realizing that we are enough and we don't always have to fix things. When we tend to get, I say this all the time, we tend to get the broken crayons. We get opportunities when things are in need of repair, when things are in need of reconstruction. And I want to change that narrative. We don't always have to accept those things. We can because we're skilled at doing that, but we don't always have to accept the opportunities that are not best suited for us. So I think it means that we are detectives and witnesses, right? So we need to dig deeply into things, and we also need to read the tea leaves and know when enough is enough. So I've said a lot in that moment, so I'm going to graciously share the microphone with Dr. Savage.
Thank
Wow.
you.
Well, yeah, you said a lot of things that I connect with. When I think about what it means to me to be a Black woman nowadays, I think about um, just really combating those negative images that folks have, those stereotypes. It's recognizing that those things exist, not accepting them, but holding your head high, even when it's hard to do so. In my experience, I have encountered a lot of challenges being a Black woman, not necessarily from other races, but oftentimes from my own race, because colorism is a thing.
Oh, yes.
Colorism, which ultimately stems from racism, has always been a thing. So I've always heard, you're pretty to be dark skinned.
Right.
And what exactly does that mean? Are you stating that, like there's an insult to part of it as well as a compliment, but I never take it as a compliment because why can't it be that you're pretty or you're beautiful?
Exactly.
And so I think as a Black woman, it is accepting this and loving the skin that you're in, holding your head high, being that sister to other Black women to help to empower them, to pour into them, to uplift them. So I feel like there is a lot that comes with being a Black woman. It is also understanding that you have to do extra. You really do. You have to do that extra stuff to stand apart. And it's unfortunate, but it's just the perception, that strong Black woman. So I definitely connected with the broken crayon piece because a lot of times you are put on that road or put in that placement where it's very challenging. And the expectation is this strong Black woman can handle it. And even though sometimes we don't want to be that strong Black woman, we do it. We do it anyway. We persevere. And so for me, being a Black woman means getting the job done, and not allowing the challenges to get in the way to cause you to stop or to give up on yourself.
Yeah. Man, every time I've asked a question, especially of women, the three words strong Black woman invariably comes up. And I actually wrote that in my blurb, strong Black woman, Black girl magic. And I think depending on how it's used, it sometimes it's just simply a trope, right? And it kind of doesn't always allow for the level of vulnerability because you're a strong Black woman, you have to always be strong. But what does that actually mean? And what happens when you think that you aren't? Are you able to have your breakdown moments? And then, like you said, lift yourself back up. So it's just a conversation or a thought, but it invariably comes up every time I pose the question to a sister. So to go along with that, and I think you guys in your answer to the first question, you kind of circled around this question: what words, images, or people come to mind when you think of the word resilience? So Nakeisha, you can go first this time.
The first image that comes to mind is
Sure. Say that again, please.
a phoenix. That's the
Oh,
first image that comes
love
to
it.
mind.
Yes,
A phoenix, because when I think about a phoenix, I think about rebirth
right.
or renewal. And that's what I think about when I think about resiliency. I think about that positivity, that drive, that determination, that willingness to just continue to keep pushing forward. Um, that understanding that there's going to be struggle and challenges, but even in the face of those struggles and challenges, I'm still going to try. I'm still going to put forth my best effort. So I think about a phoenix.
Yeah, and with that phoenix, there's a death first, right? I mean, you have to have gone through this really serious low point in order for you to rise from those ashes, to be reborn into something better than you were. I love that analogy. That definitely gets to the fiction writer in me, and I've actually written that. So, what about you, Heidi? What words, images, or people come to mind when you think about the word resilience?
So I think that's a great question. And my what comes into mind changes. It depends on what I'm thinking and where I am. But
Mm.
right now in this very moment, I am thinking about a picture. You all may or may not have seen the picture. It's a picture of medical students, and they are standing on the porch of an old enslaved house on the
Mm.
Whitney plantation. And it says, "We are our ancestors' wildest dreams." And it's a variety of young Black medical professionals. I think they're all in medical school. I don't know any of them, but I know they all have some tough stories, right? Just because of the nature of just being Black in America right now. So I know that each of them has an individual story, but yet they're standing on a plantation that may or may not have captured some of their ancestors, and they are resisting and persisting, and they are in the medical field regardless of all of the things that they've encountered. So I love that image, and that stands out for me right now because despite of all the obstacles that they have no doubt encountered, they've made it to that space and place. And God knows we need Black medical professionals.
Almost definitely. And you talk a lot about social justice, and we the work that we do here with culture proficiency, but it really started in the medical field
Mhm.
because they did not, many of them, know how to deal with the diversity of patients that they would receive. And so there was a huge disconnect with the communication, with the medical care, because they really weren't culturally proficient. And so, of course, that's eventually moved into the field of education. Last week, when we had our meeting and we talked about our department, it is the most diverse this department has ever been since I've been in the county, and I only was ever in the department that we are in. And I also thought about you, Heidi, being the first, not just the first African American or Black person, but even just the first person of color. And I hate even saying that. And no, we always talk about these different firsts. And it's great, but it's also frustrating that we continuously have to have these firsts. 2021, and we still having these firsts. But that's who you are. That's part of the legacy that you will leave, and that is not anywhere near close to the truth of what your legacy will be. But it is, but it is something that people will say. We have our first African American person who's leading this department, who is this executive director, and it's a truth, but that doesn't encapsulate everything that there is, no more than the diversity that we have now encapsulate everything that we are as a department. But it is notable, and it is something that we have to keep striving for, because we don't always want to, because in order to have a 20th, a 100th, we have to have that first. So that's a resilience right there, being in that role, being in spaces in which you everyone doesn't look like you. Everyone doesn't necessarily have the same type of thought or commitment to the things that you do. I think that there's a resilience in that. So make sure that you're taking care of yourself in the multitude of ways that you need to. That's why I appreciate you making time for us today, because I know that you are busy. So now I'm gonna let you lead with this question, Heidi. And you ladies, it's a dual question, and I've always given everyone the opportunity to answer one of them, but I'm gonna pose both. Describe a time in your life um, in which you weren't as resilient as you wanted or needed to be, or a time in your life in which you felt truly resilient.
So, um, in the middle of my career in education, I was not fired, not demoted, not um, separated, but I was reassigned, right? I was reassigned to a different department and I didn't know why. Nobody told me why. Nobody explained the long-term plan. Nobody said anything to me. And that was, it crushed my professional spirit for a little bit because I just didn't know why it happened to me. I was working hard. I was cultivating relationships with my colleagues. I was being supportive. I was out in the field. I thought I was doing a really good job. My evaluations were solid, nothing, never any room or never any space that said that I was in need of improvement in this area. So I was really perplexed for a little bit. And that I felt it in the pit of my stomach. I felt it in the depths of my soul. I felt like I had failed a bunch of people around me because I was shifted. And I still don't know what happened, but I did not feel very resilient. I wasn't ready to quit, but I was, a little part of me left. It just really left. And I had no one, I had people to talk to about it, but nobody had any answers. Nobody had questions either because I explained lots of the things. Often when we don't have answers, we have way more questions. Nobody had anything for me. So I did not feel very resilient. I didn't feel very gritty. I didn't feel like I could even bounce back from that. But um, we serve a good and perfect God, and I think it was a good and perfect move because it worked out for me.
Good, good, good. How long did it take you to get to the point where as you could say what you just did, that low point that it may have been the segue into something else that was perhaps more positive, more affirming? How long did it take you to get to the point where you could see it in that way?
I think it took me about 4 or 5 months, and it wasn't me. It was not me. It was a mentor and a friend.
Mm,
He would probably be a very modest in me calling him a mentor, but he is definitely a mentor and a friend, and he talked me through it and helped me through it and helped me make sense of it and helped me see it from a different perspective. I think
mhm.
often what we see depends on who's doing the seeing, right? So I just saw something in a very different way, and it helped me get my stride back. I got my sea legs and I built my confidence, and I thought, you know what, this didn't happen to me. Uh, I'm gonna make sense of it, and I did. So it took about 6 months.
That's good. And you mentioned something I'm going to get back to because it's a piece in the journal I think is important to mention and it aligns to a question I'll pose in a little while. But Nakeisha, a situation or instance in your life in which you felt truly resilient, or perhaps an event in which you didn't feel as resilient as you wanted or needed to be?
So the first thing that pops in my mind actually connects to the poem that you spoke
Mm,
about earlier. And the quick and dirty of that situation is that I am a mom, and my daughter, who is now 19, was enrolled in high school where the policy was for her to have to wear a white formal gown for graduation. My daughter is gay. On site, she looks like a boy, a handsome, uh, beautiful boy. I accept her as she is. And she didn't feel comfortable with wearing a dress that wasn't her. And so I began the process in order to demonstrate to her that I have her back, I am her advocate, I support her. So I began to have conversations with the school and with the district surrounding changing the policy. Initially, the response was, this is what we do. We've been doing it for 174 years. This is what it is. I was even told, maybe she should go to a different school. I was told that maybe she should just put the dress on so that her family would have an opportunity to watch her walk across the stage. For me, that felt like a level of discrimination. Um, she should not have been forced to be wearing something that she didn't feel comfortable in. If the feminine girls could wear dresses and feel comfortable in what they were wearing, then I wanted my daughter to be able to put on pants and be able to walk across the stage and feel comfortable in what she was wearing. And this became a fight. We did a petition. I reached out to different LGBTQ organizations. Some organizations turned their back and said, oh no, this is a fight that you will not win. Others have tried in the past, and so you might as well just give up. And they gave me those same options of taking her out of the school or just forcing her to wear the dress. But and I kept checking in with my daughter because this was very hard. This was heavy. There were some girls in the school that would taunt her and say, I can't wait to see you in your heels and your dress, and so there was a level of depression that came over her. But her and I, we just continued to touch bases, to pour into each other, to keep us continuing to fight the fight. And ultimately, we were able to get the policy changed. And it was something that felt so good. It felt good. Other parents of other students or children that were like my daughter, they came to us, they thanked us, because for them, it was a fight that they just didn't feel like it was possible to get it overturned because others had tried and failed. And so to me, that is my proudest moment. For me, that was something that I think my daughter will always remember, that even though this, everything was kind of stacked against us, it didn't seem like we were going to win, but we were able to get the policy changed so that she could be able to wear pants for graduation. The irony is that happened right at the pandemic. And so she didn't have a chance to wear the pants across the stage, but I'm still hoping that the district will do a makeup because that ceremony is so very important to parents to see their children graduate from high school. And so that's my story.
And excuse me, and let the people know how long that took you.
We fought that fight for about 2.5 years. So she was like a sophomore. I literally had to reach out to the ACLU. It was a whole situation. And there was some bullying, from others to try to get us to back down from what it was that we were standing for. But we just kept pushing forward, pushing forward. It was exactly. 2.5 years.
2.5 years. So that's serious resilience right there. That's perseverance. And what you were able to accomplish is bigger than your daughter. And you know that, right? It's bigger. Everyone that will come after her, they don't have to have that fight. It's going to be something that's normalized, right? And that's what we want. But a lot of times to make that change, you have to have that one person, those two people. And that is our history, unfortunately, like we said, right? In this country, everything has to be a fight, even when sometimes it's people who look like you. And in this situation, the principal was, so he told me, was a fellow African-American woman.
Absolutely.
Very much supporting this tradition, but it was a discriminatory policy or a practice. And so both of your answers, and thank you guys for sharing that. And I know it's very personal and touches your heart, which all of this does. But in your discussion, in your sharing of your stories, you talked really about community. I know you didn't use that word, but that's what really resonated with me. And I have a section in both the male journal and the women's journal called, see, like a woman of helping hands or a man of helping hands. And it's really about the role that community plays in our resilience. So Heidi, when you mentioned the mentor, whether it was an official one or not, that person was part of your community, and he really helped you perhaps see something in a different light that really helped you maybe get out of a rut and get out of your own way. And you, Nakeisha, you talked about all these other support systems, but when you mentioned your daughter, you were that person for her. So one of the questions that I ask in the book is about allies. So I ask people to think about their allies at home, think about their allies at school or work, and maybe just in their general community. And so, of course, for your daughter, Nakeisha, you're like, especially in this situation, you're like her best ally, her huge advocate, and that was really important for her. But if you think about yourself, and I think so, Nakeisha, I think you're going first. So either one of the either at work, at home, at school, who are your allies? Who are the people that you really rely on to help build you up when you need it? Or to tell you the truth when you need that too, because that's important.
This is a very timely question, actually. I count myself as blessed to have a core group of people that I consider to be my friends, right? My friends, because everyone isn't your friend. So when I say friend, I'm talking about people that I know I can trust. I know that they have my back. I know that they're going to tell me the truth. Even if it's something that I don't want to hear, these are the people that I know I can go to if I'm feeling overwhelmed. And so I have two sisters, well, not biological sisters, but sisters that I met through working in Baltimore City schools. We went through New Leaders Program together for principalship. And Dr. Crystal Harding, Lindsay, and soon to be Dr. Marie Parfait Davis. And when I say we get together at least twice a month, because it's like that's a part of our self-care. It's a part of us being able to vent, to give feedback, to laugh, to cry. And it's all becomes a process for us. So those ladies, I would say, are probably my core community, my peeps. Right? PEA, PS, I think it is, Positive Energy Accountability Partners.
Lovely. Thank you.
And I also have a friend that I've had since I was 10, and he's a lawyer. He lives in Atlanta, but I always know that at any time I can call him and he's going to be thoughtful in his responses because he knows who I am at my core. And he's going to push me. When I was going through this doctoral program, there were times when I was unsure about the completion. And so these core group of people were the people that poured into me, empowered me, uplifted me, and kept me moving forward. These are the people that when I say they're all my friend, I love them. Like I love them for life. And I know that they love me too. And we always joke and say, occasionally we'll have a disagreement. And, we'll say to one another, like, how long are you going to be mad? Because I'm gonna call you next week because you're not going anywhere. You forever gonna be in my life. And, and that feels good to know, like I'm gonna make mistakes as a friend. I'm gonna do things that potentially unintentionally, of course, that you may not like, but just know that I love you. And so it's never intentional and that I always have your best interests at heart. And so I would say my two good girlfriends and then my best friend that lives in Atlanta, they are the ones that I'm closest to right now.
Beautiful. We definitely need them. What about you, Heidi? Who are your allies?
That's a really good question. I have a few. My husband, I'm happily and lovingly married. I've been married for almost 21 years. I mean, in a couple of weeks, it'll be 21 years. So we grew up together, right? We've been dating since I was a teenager. And he loves me enough to tell me the truth and to hold me accountable. So I love your acronym, Dr. Savage, PEAPS, PEAPS. Yeah, I think that's awesome. When you were spelling it, I was like, she spelled that wrong. It's PEEP. But I love the accountability. It's funny. I don't value as much feedback from people that don't love me, right? Because generally, if they don't love me, I don't know if it's coming from a place of truth, if it's coming from a place of harm, if it's coming from a place of to seek and destroy. So I don't know. But if you love me, then I want you to love me enough to tell me the truth and to also hold me accountable. So that's what I'm looking for. And my allies do that. They let me know when I'm operating. So I love Brene Brown and I love Lovey Ajayi Jones. And those two books sort of keep me on a straight and narrow. Lovey Ajayi Jones has this thing called an it was called Iroki. I'm saying it wrong, but anyway, it's an affirmation about who you are, where you come from, what you stand for, whose shoulders you stand upon, and I love it. You just create an affirmation about who you are. Brene Brown talks about our boundaries and our values. When we need people around us, she asserts rather, we need people around us who will let us know when we're operating outside of our boundaries. So I have two boundaries operating outside of our values. I'm sorry, y'all, not boundaries, values. She argues that we have two values, only two, and we can all list 50 values: honesty, trustworthiness, integrity, all of those things. She pushes you to work through a process to skinny down and identify two. And then some people say, um, well, my personal values or my professional values. And she pushes further and says, listen, you only have one set. Personal and professional collide, and you are who you are. I don't know what my values are, right? So a couple months ago, a year ago, I thought I knew. So I like to say that my values are aspirational. I want to live in this space. So the two things that I aspire to be most often are courageous and rooted in social justice. So I don't always feel very courageous. I don't always feel like speaking up. I don't always feel like speaking truth to power. I have to really lean into that courage to do that, right? And I think that that's part of my ability to be resilient or to bounce back or to demonstrate some resile. And the other part is social justice. It takes somebody who's courageous to speak up for those who've been marginalized or put at the margins or excluded. So I would say all of that to say that my allies tell me when I'm operating outside of my core values, or tell me when I'm doing something that doesn't align with my belief system or the things that I know to be true and the things that I think will push humanity forward.
Got you, man. You said a lot there, and I won't. Man, I love people say a lot when I'm like, oh, like where to begin, right? And I'm not gonna tackle all of that. A couple of points. So you talked about your values, and I know that in the journals, I do have an exercise for people to arrive at their core values because that's exactly what you're saying. So we have like this huge list of values, and we can. It's difficult for us to dwindle them down, but in the end, we really only act on a true handful of those values. And some people are very clear what they are, and some people aren't. So I definitely am with Brene Brown there with getting to the heart of it and people having a clear understanding of it. But when it comes to your allies in those different places, I think it's about finding out what your needs are because they're going to vary. So what you may need from someone who loves you, from your husband. I love how you stated that because when you're married, your significant other, one will hope that that person is your friend, that person is your ally, is your advocate, is your support, and can also be honest with you because that's how you get to those 21 years or 22 years or whatever the case may be. But your expectation for the people who love you and on your home, they're not going to necessarily going to be what you need from someone if you're in school or at your place of work. Or I know you said that you're in a sorority, and so maybe even the type of allyship that they give to you is going to look different. So because some people meet different needs that you have as a whole person. Everyone doesn't need to be everything for you. So, Nakeisha definitely has allies here. She's new. I'm one of them. I'm just proclaiming that right
Yes,
now.
you are. Both of you are.
And Heidi, you have allies in the department, but also around the district, and they all meet different needs for you as well. But I think we can acknowledge that, but we have to be really clear about what our needs are, because there are situations in which they are just simply toxic. They are toxic, and because sometimes that toxicity is at home, sometimes it's at work, sometimes at school, sometimes in the community. So that's the reason why I bring it up, because depending on the communities in which you move in and out of, you may have to be more or less resilient, right? So you may have allies here, and you definitely do, Heidi. But like you said, you may sit around a table and you know that conversation is going on. And you're like, do I have to be the one to say it? Mm-hmm. Right? You hate to always have to be the one to say it, but you know what's going to happen if someone doesn't. And we see that all the time. We're like, who was around the table when that decision was made? Mm-hmm. Either they didn't have enough people or the right people around the table, or they had the right people, but people were afraid, or that person was afraid. Because who always wants to be that one person to say, have you thought of this? Maybe you should. That's difficult. And it's not always fun. Mm-hmm. But oftentimes that's the position we find ourselves. So I'm going to bring this to a close. I have like 3 more questions to pose for you ladies, and then I'm going to let you go, because I know you have more work to do and just continue with your day. So when you think about your self-care, and I believe, Heidi, are you first with this one? Okay, Heidi. So when you think about your own self-care, what does that look like? Not either, but and. So what is it you're doing right now to really take care of yourself? Because in the book, I look at different types of self-care, like spiritual self-care, which is not the same as saying you have to be religious, but spiritual, physical, professional, financial. So I look at 7 different types of self-care. So what does self-care look like for Dr. Oliver? And maybe what are some things that you are doing that you think I really need to adopt to really improve my overall self-care?
That's a good question. So I do a variety of things to center and honor myself. The first thing I do is drink a lot of water, right? So I try to stay hydrated. Um, Hydration, I think people underestimate the value of hydration and how that just has so many benefits. So that's the first thing. The second thing is prayer and meditation. So, that probably should have come first before hydration, but prayer and meditation. I start my day and end my day with prayer. I pray throughout the day. I meditate. I try to have a still and a calmness that kind of calms me down. When you work on a team of a variety of people, you tend to absorb a little bit of their energy. And some people's energy and vibrations are really high, and some people's are low. So it impacts you in that way. Another thing I do is I exercise. I am part of the Peloton gang, and I love it. I ride a Peloton. I have a treadmill. And I also exercise and walk with my husband. I'm always in a Nike Run Club challenge. So I try to really get moving, get blood flowing, get, what is it called? Oxytocin moving around. Is that the right word? I try to get all of those things moving around and going. And then I also know how to relax. I know how to sit down and mind my business. And I appreciate doing that, being able to sit back and like, you know what? That's not my battle. That's not my circus. Those are not my clowns. So I'm going to go over here and sit down. So I think those are the things that help me. And I also like to connect and be social. I love brunch. I love hanging out with family. My family, I choose my family over anybody in the world. So those things really make me happy. So I try to find things that bring me personal joy and do those things often and early.
Is there anything with you in this new position, with this new responsibility, and really over not just all of us in the department, but just your role in the district at large? Is there anything with your self-care that you say that I really need to ramp up, or I need to institute?
Oh, that's a good question. So I started off a meeting apologizing to my team about boundaries, about me crossing some boundaries. So sending an email after 6 o'clock or after 5:30, contacting folks on the weekend. Weekends and evenings should be your time, and that should be off limits. So that's one of the things I really need to ramp up. I really need to ramp up the way in which I manage myself throughout the course of the day so that I am free and don't have to bother or intrude on anybody else's personal space. So it's honoring boundaries, and I think a lot of people are afraid of that term boundaries. Boundaries are not for me. Boundaries are I'm sorry, boundaries are not for you. Boundaries are for me. Boundaries teach other people how to treat me and what they can and cannot do. And I think it's really, really, really important that when you're off and you're not constantly working. Although we know that this is not a normal time, we're still growing through a pandemic. So things are not going to be normal and not going to be as cut and dry as we would like them to be.
Okay, so really trying to figure out that home life balance with these extra responsibilities and extra people, because when you have a lot more people, it adds definitely more to your plate. Thank you. And Nakeisha, what does your self-care like, as far as what are you doing now, and maybe what you think you really need to do more of, or perhaps increase?
So self-care actually for me is a work in progress. I historically have struggled with work-life balance. I tend to have a lot on my plate because I like to stay busy. But self-care for me is beginning to recognize that because I live by lists, right? Beginning to recognize that everything doesn't have to be checked off.
Right.
Everything doesn't have to be perfect, right? So self-care for me is just giving myself permission to say this is not done yet, but I'm going to get to it because it's going to get done. But I can still allow my mind to relax because my mind will keep going and going and going, and it'll impact my ability to sleep and just really to just even and just enjoy time when I'm out with family or friends. And so self-care to me is just being kinder to myself. And reminding myself that it's okay to take a pause. It's okay to relax. I identify most weekends, I identify the things that I like, that I love, that makes me smile, that makes me happy. And I tell myself, well, I owe it to myself to indulge in that thing or to experience that thing. So that I can kind of feel rejuvenated or just feel whole and happy and not just consumed with all the other things that are going on in my life. Um, I know that I need to do better health wise. When Dr. Heidi said the Peloton, I'm looking into it, Dr. Heidi. I'm looking at the bikes now to try to figure out which one might be the best one, but I definitely want to be more consistent with exercising. Water was another piece. It's so hard for me to drink water, but I know that you're supposed to drink at least a gallon a day. So that's also something that I'm pushing myself on because I know that there are lots of benefits from doing those things. And so for me, self-care is just kind of recognizing the things that I like to do, giving myself permission to do those things, giving myself a chance to pause and know that I don't have to do it perfectly and I don't have to do it immediately, of course, within the deadlines, but just, not holding those things over my head, whereas I'm not able to just pause and have a good time or relax or rest. That's self-care for me, self-love, it's loving on me.
That's good. That's great. I know in the books, what I've done when I get to this piece is to really just set up a form for people to, it's called like a week of self-care. Because if we don't really oftentimes be deliberate, write it down and say, this is what I'm going to do on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, just throughout the week, and then circle back around. Did you accomplish it? If not, what really got in the way? So I ask people to be very deliberate about their self-care because we say it all the time. I have a stationary bike downstairs. They must have got me for Christmas, and I start off good. I probably haven't ridden that thing about a month and a half. It's probably more, but I'm going to say a month and a half. It has to really be more because I stutter and stop, right? Some things that you do well, they come naturally to you. And so it's easy for you to initiate certain types of self-care. But for me, I'm not a big exercise person. And so anytime I want to do more of that, I have to have more perseverance. I have to have more resilience in those areas. So I'm right there with you when it comes to that. So 2 more questions. I'm going to ask you guys this. And Heidi, she already told me everything that she loves. So I'm not going to ask you that question. So I'm going to ask you this question, guys. We're going to begin with Nakeisha. So complete this sentence. I am.
Okay. I am a work in progress. I am a mother, an educator, a sister, a supporter. I'm a Black woman.
Nice. And then Heidi, I am.
So I'm going to challenge myself not to say the things that Dr. Savage said, because I am all of those things too. So I will say I am grateful. I am grateful. I'm going to leave it at that. I'm grateful for all of those things that she mentioned and more. I'm grateful.
Okay, so the final question, and this I always just say it's open to interpretation. And we'll begin with you, Heidi, to close it out. What is the color of your resilience?
The color of my resilience is yellow. So I think it's yellow because it's penetratable. Yellow is the color of energy and of I don't want to say luck, but joy. And I think I did some research on colors, but yellow is the
Yeah.
color of energy. Yellow is the color of yellow is just my color right now, and I think that Black women look good in yellow. So that's it was a what do you call that? The Pantone colors years ago, but yellow is it for me. The color of my resilience is yellow. Period.
Beautiful, beautiful. What about you, Nakeisha? What's the color of your resilience?
So I'm torn between like a salmon and a coral color.
Hmm.
To me, that color it's not a primary color. When I think of primary, I think of kind of black and white. It's multi-layered. It's a sprinkle of this, it's a little bit of that. And it really depends on the situation. It just depends on the person, but it's also a bright, beautiful color as well. So it kind of brings me back to that whole Phoenix kind of thing. It has a little bit of yellow in it. It has a little bit of pink in it. And it has a little red in it. So it's all of the things. It's multi-layered, multi-dimensional.
Look at you guys with these deep answers at the end of our time together. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much. I enjoyed our conversation. I learned a lot about both of you, and it also hearing you reinforce what I think I know about you. So it's always a rewarding conversation when I have these opportunities to speak with people who I know very well and some people who I'm just getting to know a little bit better. So thank you for stopping by on what is this? Self-Care Saturday with Indy Jones. Thank you both, doctors.
Thank you
You're
for having
welcome. Thank you for
me.
having us.
Thank you.